Okay, fellas, so let's click on our models folder. So as a very brief recap, we remember in .NET MVC that we have a controller, which is the aspect that chooses which view to return. So when we type /home/privacy, it goes to the home controller, goes to the privacy action, and then finds the privacy view and squirts that down the wire back to the browser. So that's where we're at with MVC right now. So today we're going to look at adding a model into that. So let's click on our models folder, and I want you to add in a class, as we saw, called D6. We could call it die if we want, but it's not a great name, is it? Shall we do it? Yeah, okay. Let's
D6.
Call it D6. Okay, yeah, that's good enough. Let's just have a decision. Okay, so you can see here I've right-clicked models, added class, and I'm going to change this to D6. It doesn't matter if I delete the .cs, it will take care of that for me. Okay, and it's stubbed out our class for us. So can you recall for me, please, the properties of the dice? Whether you have to just remember, just imagine a dice in your head and see if you can recall what we were talking about.
Number of sides.
Okay, yep. So private int number of sides, yep.
Color.
Lowest value.
Private int lowest value, yep. And I guess by extension we're going to have the highest value.
Yep.
Okay, and what else was there?
Color of it.
Color of it. Private string color, yep. And was there another thing?
And the current value.
Ah, yeah, private int current value. Excellent. Okay, so that's good. And let's make our special method again, the constructor. There is a shortcut in Visual Studio. If you type CTOR, you can see here it's giving me some autocomplete. I just hit the tab button twice, and it writes the code for me. So CTOR is short for constructor. So this will return an instance of our class. We don't need to write any code there just yet. And we also had a public method with no return value, so it's void, and we called it role. And there's our method body, and we had another public method with no return value called place, and it took a parameter which is desired value. And what I can tell you here is straight away, if we're going to be in our client code, in our website, or our unit tests, or our Scratchpad, if we want to set the value, well, this looks quite straightforward to me. We're passing in the desired value, so now we need to update the state of the die, of the D6. So we'll say this dot current value equals desired value. Okay, that's good. Looks like that will work. What about rolling the dice? Any guesses as to how to get a random number?
I know in Python it's randint, but
Okay,
rand.int, but I don't know what it might be in. I'm assuming perhaps something similar.
Okay, cool. In fact, in C#, we've got a random number generator. In fact, we've got at least two. We've got one which is in, you can see here, it's system.random, and you'll see the little pop-up text says, represents a pseudo-random number generator, which produces a sequence of numbers. And then the other one is a cryptography random number generator, which is overkill. We don't need cryptographic strength random number generation. Okay, so what we do is we'll just have an ordinary random. So we've got a variable of type random, we're going to call it random generator so that it's clear that that's the variable name, and we need to call its special constructor method, and Visual Studio is filling in that for us. Excellent. Cheerio. And now to get a random number, we thank you, Lovey. We will call we'll call a method on it. So if we want a random number, we want to trap it and store it somewhere against the current value. So let's say this.current value equals random generator. Whoops. Dot next. And as we look at the next method here, it says it takes a minimum value and a maximum value. And it returns a random integer that is within the specified range, which is why we've got our lowest and highest value. This dot lowest value, comma, this dot highest value. Cool. Are you boys all there with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
You all good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me know when you finished typing.
I am done.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a mine.
Cool. Okay, so I'm going to go to the scratch pad. I'm going to save this code. I'm going to do Control-Shift-B to compile the code from just being this source code into being a DLL or a linked library. So once that's built, I'm going to go into the scratch pad. Look at the program, and we've got our hello world. And now I'm going to create a new instance of the dice. So D6, and what's it saying here? A little red squiggly says the namespace D6 could not be found. Are you missing a using directive or an assembly reference? Well, definitely the system of namespacing. Look in here, I can see that the namespace for the dice is games.models, game.models. We don't have that up there. And the reason we don't is we haven't linked this project to this one. So we're going to add in a dependency. So we're going to add a project reference to the game project. And now Scratchpad is able to see the classes that we define in game. Let me just close that. So now the squiggle's saying, are we missing? And yes, we are. So I'm going to go to the end of that. I'm going to do Control dot, and now it's offering to fill in using game.models at the top. There it is. Look at that. So now our program has access to this D6 class. We've imported it. We're using it. So we call our special method equals new D6. Excellent. And let's roll the die. Okay, cool. Let's run that. Let's see what's going to happen. Cool, we've got a hello world, but nothing else. Any ideas why, anyone?
We're not returning anything
Does it?
from row.
Have we told it to actually tell us what the value is?
Exactly. We've not put any output there. Correct. So let's have a look. We want to do a console.writeLine my die dot look, there's only these public methods that we can see. So now's the time to talk about one of the principles of object-oriented programming. This is really quite important, and there are there's an idea of three pillars of object-oriented programming. One is called polymorphism, One is called inheritance, and the other pillar is encapsulation. And encapsulation is an interesting one because it has a meaning in English and a meaning in OO, and unsurprisingly, they're kind of linked, but people often don't see the English version very well. So when we say in object-oriented code, and classes in particular, that we're encapsulating the fields, the private members of the class, what we're saying is we keep everything private until we have a need to expose them. So much like in a kettle, when you want to boil it, you don't go in and play with the heating element and the electricity supply. That's all private and tucked away and nice and safe. But there is a publicly accessible switch, which is plastic and is isolated from the mains. And when you press it, it operates some private internal mechanism, right, which protects you from getting electrocuted and does the job. And right now, we want to print out the current value, but there is no way of doing it because we've encapsulated it, or rather, we've marked it as private, so nothing can see it. So now we're going to expose it using a public property. And the syntax for that is public. We need to specify the data type. Well, we know it's an integer, and we need to give it a name. Now, C# is case sensitive. And a sensible name for the current value would be current value. So I'm going to call that with a capital C, which is also part of the coding convention, current value. And it can be confusing here because we've got two things with the same name. But you'll notice that one is private and with a lowercase c, and one is public with an uppercase c. And we're going to expose this with a getter. Okay. And our get is going to say return this dot current value. Cool. So what we've done here is when we hit the roll button, we're updating the internal state of the class with a random number, and we now have some public facing property to read that value. So you're probably already ahead of me. You've probably already swapped back here and gone my.current value. And notice it's current value with a capital C. Cool. Only I need console write line. Excellent. I'm going to run it. Hey, it's worked. We've got a 0. Cool. Okay. Ah, we've got a 0. That's not good, is it?
We haven't assigned a higher and lower.
Okay, excellent. We haven't assigned it a higher or a lower value. So there's a couple of places we can do this. But to talk again about this special method, the constructor, that is the ideal place for initializing the state of your class. That's part of its purpose. So let's initialize the state of the class. This dot lowest value equals, well, we said 1, didn't we? And this dot highest value equals 6. Cool. Let's see if that works. Is anyone else's machine as slow as mine?
It might be because you're hosting the thing as well. I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah, of course. And I appear to be running the website.
Yeah.
Good skills, Jace. So I'm going to stop that, hop back to the program. And you can see here, look, the difference. When I'm on program, it's finding that I'm in the Scratchpad project. And when I'm in the D6, it's swapping to Internet Explorer Express, which is the web host for hosting the website. So let's go back to Scratchpad, hit the play button. Cool, I got a 4. Look at that. That's a random number. I want a few more random numbers.
Getting an error when I try and run it.
Okay,
Sure.
what's your error?
Oh, never mind.
Fixed it?
Semicolon expected. Where is that supposed to be? Okay, thank you.
So what was the problem?
In the get current value
Yeah.
bit, the public thing, I forgot to put a semicolon at the end of the
Okay.
return this dot current value.
Excellent. Okay, good stuff.
Not like in mine.
Okay. What's your error message?
I've got build errors somewhere, but I'm not quite sure where. What are you saying?
Okay, should we share your screen?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I just want to see if I've got anything. Line 4. Oh. It doesn't like. Jace, can you share your screen quickly?
Yep. Can you see that?
If you go over to the program.c,
Okay.
it doesn't like my namespace. So you've got, so my namespace is, oh wait, am I just forgetting?
No, you faded out there, Mike.
No, sorry, I'm just talking to myself. I've got, that may be it.
Is it working now?
Yeah, there we go.
Cool. Okay.
Name is Alex, missing semicolons in places.
Okay. All right, so this is good. We're getting there. We've got our dice rolling. We're getting one value out. Shall we try getting a few more?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm going to spit out, cut and paste a whole bunch. Okay, I got 2 4s, a 1, a 2, a 5, a 5, a 1, and a 3. Not bad.
I've got 1 3 1 3 5 2.
Great. Okay, so they're random, right? They're different to mine, different to Alex's, different to each other, and you can expect them to occasionally be the same because that's the nature of random numbers. Sometimes you get the same number twice. But let's have a look at a bit of syntax here. You can see what we're doing. We're cutting and pasting. Let's say we want to do 100 rolls of the dice. So given that we're learning C# and C# syntax, this is a good start to look at a for loop. And we use a for loop when we want to count from, when we want to do an operation a number of times. Okay, maybe we want to do it 5 times, 10 times, whatever, however many. So I'm going to write the syntax for you. And what we're going to do is we're going to surround this code here in a code block. Okay, and what we're going to say is we want to run this code, let's say 50 times. So I'm going to demonstrate the syntax for you. You can look it up. But what we say is for, and now we need a counter variable. And traditionally, people use the letter I for index. You can use whatever you want. It's going to be an integer. We're going to initialize it to 0. And this is a real special syntax where we're having a lot of code on one line. We're going to say while I is less than 10, increment I plus plus. Okay, and that is the syntax of a for loop. And what that says is when I is 0, run this code. And when this code is run, increment I to be 1 and run the code again, and increment it to be 2 and run the code again. And you'll see, well, actually, you tell me, what would you expect to see in our console output?
Jace,
Yeah,
we've got a slight issue with our random numbers in that next. How do I get up the information about it?
hang on, a bit later, Mike.
It's not inclusive of 6.
Isn't it?
No. So I've got 100 random numbers and not one of them is 6.
Wow, okay.
So I've either got a very weird outcome or the next, I don't know what you call it, method doesn't work.
Yeah, I'm not getting
Not
anything.
doesn't work, but we need to alter the input.
Okay, that's a great spot. And if you look at my screen right now, you'll see that if I'd read the text a bit deeper, you're entirely correct. Look, greater than or equal to the minimum value and less than the maximum value.
Yeah, so we need to change it to 7.
Well, I
Yeah.
guess do highest value plus 1, maybe, or rather than.
Well, here's an interesting thing. What we're not doing is telling the dice how many sides it's got. Because I guess in a way, we haven't needed to just yet. But what we could do is this trickery here. This dot number of sides equals 6. Okay, that makes sense. So then we could say this dot highest value equals this dot number of sides plus 1. So we're still accurately maintaining. Okay. No, it's all right. The highest value is our internal field, right? Nobody knows what that is. The fact that we've called it highest value and marked it as 7,
Yep.
it's not strictly speaking
true.
true, is it?
Yeah.
Our highest value is still 6. So I get what you're saying, Alex. Yeah, okay. So actually, we could maintain the fact that 6 is the highest value, and when we're creating our next, we could say this. That's what you meant, wasn't it?
Yep. Yeah.
I think that's an elegant solution because it preserves the notion of the highest value, and it's very clear what's going on here. And you might say to yourself, well, why are we adding 1? And then you look at the help for the code, and it becomes clear. Okay, now you boys are pretty fast, so you've already fixed it and run it, haven't you?
Yeah. Yeah, all good in the hood.
Yep.
Cool. I've got a bunch of 4s there and a bunch of 3s. How random do your dice look? Do your values look?
I'm getting a lot of repeats, but the repeats are different.
Okay.
Each time, it seems.
Okay. It's kind of a leading question because I know that we're not quite using this class the right way. So as I look at this and I see 4 and then a whole bunch of 6s, it doesn't seem to be as random as it should be. And I can tell you why, just briefly. The random number generator, when you create an instance of it, it's based, the value that it starts with is based on something like the number of seconds since midnight or the number of clock ticks inside your machine. And if you were to call this 1,000 times in rapid succession,
It would all go off the same number.
They'll start off being the same. I mean, there's a chance that they'll be different, but a lot of them will be the same until, if you wrote 1,000,000, then enough time will have elapsed, you'll get different values. And the reason is, every time we call this method, it's actually creating a new one. and starting with a new seed value for the random generator, and then coming around the loop again and creating another new one with the same random seed until the clock's ticked over, or until a second has elapsed, or whatever the mechanism is. So what we actually need to do is keep the same random generator and just call the next method. And that guarantees then that you're not using the same value. Okay, so if we want to have some new internal workings for the class, all right, this is modeling our dice and keeping the internal bits private. This, by necessity, now needs to be, in order to work properly, needs to also be a private member of the class. So can you tell me what I need to do with that? Because it's creating a new one each time, right? Every time we call roll.
Yeah. Sorry, Jason, a little lost here.
That's okay, no problem. So every time we call the roll method, we're getting a new random generator. And this is causing us a problem because if you create them in rapid succession, they don't actually give you a very random number.
Right.
Because the way it starts giving you random numbers is based on the time of day.
Okay.
So if you create 50 in 1 second, you'll probably get the same random number each time.
Right, yeah, okay.
All right. So what I'm saying is, instead of creating a new one each time we call roll, we just want to call the next method.
Mm-hmm.
And that will work as it's designed. So what I'm saying is we no longer need to keep creating this. We need to create it only once.
Yeah.
And it needs to become part of the internal workings of this class. So I'm going to add in here.
Yeah, stick it some private value.
Yeah, okay, private random, and I'm just going to call it generator now, actually, okay? I'm not going to call it random generator for no particular reason. I'm just calling it generator. So this dot generator equals, and of course we need an instance of it, new random. There we go. So when the class is created, we now have our generator with its seed value. And its seed value is the value determined by the computer at the runtime that it uses to start generating the random numbers. Okay, our variable is no longer called that. It's actually this dot generator. Aha. Cool. Let's give that a try.
Yeah, a lot less repeats.
Are there? Excellent.
There's still some, but not.
Feels like it's more random.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about you, Alex?
It's object reference. Oh, I think I haven't changed something.
Okay, you haven't changed your variable name, have you? In the D6, you've probably still got my generator or random generator or something.
Oh, this dot generator dot next, I think. No, that's says generator was not, have I? Could you? Oh wait. Can't quite see what the problem is.
Okay, what's the output window telling you down in the bottom from the build?
There's no errors, no warnings.
So does it build and run?
It does. It just doesn't show anything after Hello World.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
It says generator was null.
So in your constructor,
Mm-hmm.
so public in my screen here, look, line 25 in the constructor, I'm saying this dot generator equals new random.
Oh, right. Okay.
So we need an instance of that
Yeah.
random class.
Okay. Yep.
And I'm taking a lot for granted here, fellas. I'm not explaining tons to you,
Mm-hmm.
but you're doing fine.
Yeah. I think I just didn't catch when you did that.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay, now it's good.
Cool. Okay, so
Jace, do we need in line 35? Do we need the this dot generator? Because I didn't put this in, and it still seems to work. The reason?
Yeah, you can work without the this keyword.
Yeah.
But the reason I use the this keyword is it helps firstly, it means if I just type this dot, which I become very good at, I get the autocomplete pop up and allows me to pick from a list.
Mm-hmm.
But also it really helps you specify that when I say this dot, I'm referring to something which is a member of this class.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that will become more apparent when you have local variables. So for example, let's say I had another random generator. Number 2 equals a new generator. Sorry, new random. Okay, I don't have a this dot number 2. It isn't a class member.
Yeah.
Okay, so random generator up here is a class member, but this is a local variable.
Yeah.
Now I can use number 2. I can say number 2 dot next and give it 1 and 7. But by prefixing all of my class members with this, I can see that it's a class member.
Yeah.
And it helps me to distinguish between variables which are local and aren't class members.
Mm-hmm.
All right?
Yeah.
Cool. It's a good habit, but some people hate it. Some people love it. When you go into a business, you will be encouraged to follow the local standard.
Yeah.
If it's my team, I try and insist on having this dot because it just makes your life clearer and simpler and easier to understand. Really reinforces the fact that you're working at the class level. So you're changing the state of your model. Okay, good. So what did we learn here? We learned a little bit about the random generator not being too random. If you create 50 of them in 1 millisecond, you're going to get pretty much the same value, perhaps. We've learned that we've encapsulated some internal workings quite nicely, but we needed to expose the current value. So we made a public property, we gave it a sensible name, and we wrote a getter for it.
Yeah.
We also learned about naming convention, but what we also found was that we used the constructor to initialize the class. When we started, we had random numbers of 0 every time because we hadn't initialized the class. And what this is telling me is that when we write code like this and we're trying to use it in the console, it's quite a poor way of checking our code. And Mike knows what's coming now. He knows I'm going to say we're going to write some unit tests. So right now we're going to learn a little bit about unit testing. And what we're going to do is we're going to write a unit test for the place command. Okay. So Mike, can you give me a 20-second description of what unit tests are for, please? And if you can't, that's fine.
From what I remember of when we were doing them, Jace, they are a way to test your code works as expected as you're going along. That was how I always saw it. So we would build something, test to make sure it works, and then continue and expand it a bit more.
Excellent. Yeah, so you're cutting out a little bit there, Mike. So for Alex's sake under recording, we write unit tests to check our classes function correctly. And ideally, we should write them before we start consuming them. So we've just done a whole bunch of manual testing here, right? When we run our console, we found that we had a 0 to start with because we hadn't initialized the class properly. Then we found that the random numbers weren't terribly random because we weren't using the random properly. And we were basically consuming the class before we tested it. So if we write unit tests, it does several things for us. Firstly, it helps check that the class works as expected. And secondly, Truffles likes unit tests.
Oh, it's Meg. Meg's come home, but decided to startle the dog with the doorbell.
And secondly, the unit test gives us the confidence that if we change our code, when we run the tests, it will prove that the code still works, or it will show us that the code's broken. That's great. So let's write a unit test now for our place method. Okay. So first thing we're going to do is right-click on our solution, and we're going to add a new project. We're going to add a unit test project. Let's see, all project types. I'm going to click here, down on test, and MS test project. Actually, I'm going to click the unit test project. No, I'm not. I'm going to go for this top one, MS test, a project that contains unit tests that can run on .NET Core, which is what we're using. So I'm going to click that. Hit the next, and I'm going to call it models test. Actually, I'm going to call it models.test. All right, you can have a project name which has got dots in it.
How do I get to this new project window? I've had Meg distracting me.
Okay, no problem. So we click on the solution in the Solution Explorer, Solution Monopoly, and I'm going to add. Go to add.
Yeah.
Go to new project, and actually I'm going to change the name now. I pick test in the drop down here.
Yeah.
But I'm going to call it test.models. All right, make namespaces a bit easier. Test.models. Create. Cool. So now I have my games project, my Scratchpad project, and my unit test project. So I want to write a unit test for, what's the problem here? Do a rebuild. You'd better work. Cool. Okay, so that's working. So let's have a look at this unit test structure here. We've got a class called unit test 1, and we've got a method called test method 1, and we've got these strange angle bracket things here called attributes. And these are special markers for our unit test and for our unit test framework. And let's not worry about them right now. We'll pick our battles. But the first thing I want to do is I want to test my D6 class, the place method. So I'm going to go to unit test 1, and I'm going to rename it. I'm going to call it D6 test. Actually, yeah, D6 test. And it's offering to rename the class for me as well as the file. Hey, look at that, lovely. Okay, I need to test my class. But as before, when we had Scratchpad, we didn't have any reference to the D6 class. And similarly, in this project now, we still don't have any reference to D6. So I'm going to add in a project reference. Okay, I'm going to add in the game project. That's good. Close that. And now I'm going to manually add this in using, what was it? Game.models. Okay. And you'll see it's a dull gray because even though we've added it, we've not actually used anything in there to start with. So here's our test. And the way that we write tests, ideally we want language which follows this rule. We want to arrange the test, then we want to perform some action, and then we want to assert whether the test has passed or not. And don't worry too much about those words there, they will clarify themselves. But a good test should have a good name. So I'm going to call this when placing a 6, the value is, the current value is 6. What do you think this test is going to do? It's going to test that when we call the place method with the value 6, the current value is set to 6. It's a stupid question, but it's only a stupid question because I named the test so well, you know what the test is going to do. Okay, I could just call it test 1 and leave you to figure out what it's doing, but this is a much better name. So let's run this test. It's not doing anything, but let's run it. Run tests, Control RT as a shortcut. So I'm running the test. Go on, test window. Let's have you. Man, this is slow. Oh, Test Explorer. Let's have a look. Hey, the test passed. That's weird. We've got a passing test, but it hasn't actually done anything. And therein lies the danger. You can write many unit tests that pass and do nothing. Okay, so let's make the test fail. Let's say we need a system under test. So we're going to arrange our test. So let's have a D6. My die, oops, equals new D6. Let's act on our test. So we're going to call that method, and now we're going to assert the results. So let's use this special syntax here, assert, and so what are we trying to assert here? That when we call this method with a 6, we're expecting the current value to be 6, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so our first parameter here is our first method is r equal. That's what we want to do. We want to assert that a value that we're specifying is what we've achieved. So let's say r equal expected value is 6. Actual value is my die dot current value. That looks good. So what we're saying here is create a dice, set its value to 6 by calling the place method, then check its value. Lovely. Let's have a look at that. Let's run that test. So I'm going to go back to the Test Explorer, and I'm going to run it again. And sure enough, it's passed. Well, we'll say that. Yeah, it's passed in 9 milliseconds. Okay, so we had a passing test, even though it did nothing, and now we've got a passing test that does something. That doesn't give me much confidence that we're using this properly. So I'm going to go and break this test now and deliberately get it to fail so that I can check that my test is useful. Okay. So what we should have done really is written a failing test to start with and then fixed it or fixed the code. So let's run this test again. And now I'm going to expect this to fail because our test says I'm calling it with a 6. I'm expecting to see a 5 because I want my test to fail. And we'll measure our 5 against what the value is. Let's run that. Failing test. And what's our error message? Expected 5, but actually got a 6. Okay, so this is a bit confusing. I deliberately failed the test. So now let's go and fix it again. And we'll see that red go to green. Cool. Okay. Well, that looks good to me. That's passed the test. What else do we want to test? Let's imagine. Let's go back here and comment out this code. All right, Control KC. So you'll remember that before we set the lowest value and the highest value, our code stopped working, didn't it? Oh, it didn't stop working. It was just giving us a whole bunch of zeros. So if I run that again now, we'll expect something similar. Except we'll get zeros and ones. Look at that, masses of zeros. Okay, so I've effectively broken the code again, right? So we rewind half an hour, and we've got some broken code. So I want to write a unit test now that says, when I've got a D6, check that I don't get a random number of 0. Because we know that we want our lowest and highest values between 1 and 7, right? Or ranging from 1 to 6. So let's write a new test. We have test method. We need this attribute here. Syntax for our unit test is public void D6 should not have a 0 when rolling. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay, so let's arrange our test. So that means we need something to test. We need a D6. We're going to act. Let's call it D6 this time. Yeah, that's what we called it, D6.roll. And we're going to assert, let's say, are not equal. D6 should not have a 0. So should not be equal to 0 when we're rolling. Are not equal to 0. And our actual value is D6.current value. Okay, soon I'll stop writing this. Arrange, act, assert. But that's something to think about, the 3 A's. Let's run our test. Oh, let's go back here. I have to recompile it. I don't know why that's what's going on here. Why have I got an error? Oh, I've pasted it outside the class definition. Okay. There we go. That's better. Okay. It's compiled it in the background and it's already found these tests, the new tests. So let's write that. Okay, our test has failed. Any value except 0. So we're getting a 0 and we're thinking that we shouldn't be. And the reason is we haven't initialized our value. Okay, so let's go and fix our test. Stop lowest value.
That's why.
Sorry?
Nothing. Solve it.
Let's run that.
How do you uncomment out things?
You delete the two green slashes.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was a shortcut to do that.
There is actually. It's Control KU, I believe, or Control KCU or Control KUC. I'll have a go in a sec.
Build errors. What do you mean there are build errors?
Okay, that took a long time. Okay, this is a bit of a poor test, really. Why are we checking that it shouldn't be 0? I mean, why aren't we checking it shouldn't be 99? What we should really be checking.
Lowest value. What?
You having some problems?
Yeah.
Okay.
So after I've uncommented out so I wrote my tests and it failed. So then I was trying to uncomment out I was trying to pull back in the
lowest value and highest value, yeah.
And now it's all underlined and I'm getting an error saying D6 does not contain definition for lowest value.
It looks like you've probably still got lowest value commented out then, would be my guess.
No, I don't. Like I'm just going to write them out again and see if that works. That's now worked.
Is yours worked, Alex?
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, all good.
Okay, I'm a little bit dissatisfied with this D6 test here. It's a bit arbitrary that we're checking 0, and I should have done this the other way around. We should have written unit tests to start with, and seen the class failing, and then this would make more sense. But that's okay. Let's gloss over that mistake And really what we want, do we want a check? Is it a valid check that we are, I'll tell you what, let's go back here and no, okay, I'm going off topic. Right, so we've got some tests. We know that the current value works. Let's go and write a little eyeball test. So back in our program, I'm going to say my die.place. And I'm going to expect that when I set it to 1, it's going to place it as 1. Console.writeLine. No, I'll just copy the text. So here's a little eyeball test. Okay. Okay. Let's put a little separator here. All right, so you remember this scratch pad is literally just for doing stuff like this, seeing what's happening. Let's scroll back up. Testing place, I wanted to set it to 1 and I've set it to 1. That's good. Okay, actually I'm going to dial this back to 10 things. Okay, so here's a problem. What if me as a stupid coder, I try and place the value of 12 here? All right, there's nothing stopping me setting the value of 12, is there? Brilliant. I've now got a 6-sided dice with the values 1 to 6, but I managed to place it as the number 12. So I think we need to beef up that code a little bit to stop us making idiot mistakes. So first of all, I'm going to go back to the test. I'll cut and paste this one here to save a bit of typing time. D6 should not allow invalid place. I'm going to call it placing less than 1. Make a new D6. We're going to act is place. We're going to say anything less than 1, let's put -4. That's good enough. Okay. Could put 0. 0 is less than 1. -4 is less than 1. And what we're going to say is we want to throw an exception if something goes wrong. If someone's using this code incorrectly, we don't want to hide that. We want to throw an error, right? So
yeah,
the way we do that is with a special kind of assertion, and it's called the expected exception. So we add another thing up here, expected exception, and open brackets, and we put exception type, but let's say we're going to use an exception which is invalid parameter. So let's say type of invalid no, let's call it parameter. Okay, we're just going to do expected type of exception. We're just going to throw an exception to start with, okay? And we'll find the right exception type. We'll tune it. Is this syntax just wrong? Oh, for goodness sake. So type of exception. There we go. That is our syntax. Okay, sorry, I've hashed that up there, boys. Should have thought this through a little bit more. So what we're saying here is when we try and place a wrong number, this test is expecting an exception to be thrown. Now, at the moment, we're not doing any checking for this value. So this test is going to fail because we aren't throwing an exception. Let's run the test, watch it fail. It's failed. The method did not throw the expected exception. Cool. So let's fix the test. We fix the test by saying our business logic is when someone tries to place the dice with the wrong value, we throw an exception. So let's say if desired value is less than this dot lowest value, throw new exception. All right. So this is some learning that you're getting on the fly here. I'm just showing you it, not really writing a lesson on this. It's a seat of the pants teaching, seat of the pants learning. Do you understand what that's doing?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't lie, Jace. Meg came in halfway through, set the dog off going crazy, and then has left and trapped him in the room. So I spent half of it not paying attention. But
That's fine.
I think I've caught on.
Okay.
I've got the tail end of it.
Okay, great. So what we're saying is that we're writing code for other people here. By definition, that we're marking it as public, so other developers may use it. And what we're saying is, if you allow the user to accidentally place the wrong value, I want you to throw an error. Okay, and an error is called an exception, right? We'll throw an exception. We can prove that that works with a unit test, but let's just see how it manifests now in our. I'm going to change that to be -8. Let's watch that blow up. So we're doing an eyeball test first, just to see a typical problem. Idiot programmers passed in the wrong value, and it's actually thrown an error. Okay, that's good. So I'm going to actually hit the resume button, continue, and you'll see the error in the console window, unhandled exception. Okay, so in other words, hey developer, you stuffed up. So let's go to our test. We know we're expecting it, and we've just added it. So let's watch this test now pass. Cool, it's passed. So just to reiterate, in our model, we should only allow our users to place the dice within the expected range, which is low value to high value. And if it's less than the low value, we throw an exception. Can you tell me what I need to do for the high value?
I'll just say if desired value is higher than this dot highest value. I don't know if in C# you can put in or, so you have it all in one if statement.
Yeah, you can. You can. I'm going to write it as 2 here for the sake of the lesson and for Fraser who's not here.
Yeah.
Okay. So if it's less than 1, it's going to blow up. And if it's greater than, oh, I've got another bug here. Look.
You need to change it to highest.
It's a cut and paste bug. Yeah. And then we also want to throw an exception. Let's actually add a message in here. And I know that the exception class will take a message. So let's say value is too low, should be higher than lowest value. It's not a helpful message, but it's better than no message. And this one here is value is too high. Okay, and ideally I would be consistent and write a similar error message. I ain't gonna. I just want some error message. So let's write a unit test. So boys, can you tell me what I need to do to test the other version? You know, the other range.
Do you want it as a new unit test or just the same one? No.
I would have it as a new unit test because we're testing 2 boundary conditions here. The boundary condition of lowest value should have its own test, and the boundary condition of the highest value should have its own test. So what do you think? Cut and paste?
I would cut and paste just for simplicity.
Okay, yeah, cool. Nice and quick.
Change the title of the test.
Okay, should not allow placing greater than
6.
Greater than 6. Okay.
And then place 7 or something.
Okay, let's place 7. Should we write a failing test first?
Yeah, go on.
Go on then. Let's write
So-
6, which is a valid value, right? We
Yeah.
expect the test to now fail
Then, yeah,
because it's not throwing the exception.
yeah. Don't you give me that look, dog.
Doggies like unit tests.
The dog is sitting by the door, pining at me to try and find
Excellent.
Meg, but Meg's no longer here.
Okay, Alex, looking at my error message here,
Yes.
what do you think? Oh, it's not an error message. It's the test failure. Do you understand why it's failing?
Yeah, because it hasn't thrown the exception of it
Yeah.
being. It's just for me when I try and do it, it just doesn't run the test.
Have you marked it with this test method exception?
Yes.
Okay. Are you in your test explorer and have you selected one of these? In which case you need to go up a level to the class name here, like D6 test.
Yep, that'll do it.
Okay,
Thank you.
cool.
Wait,
No
no,
problem.
it just isn't showing up. No, hold on. Yeah, okay. It's good.
Running, working, passing?
Mhm.
Great. Okay, this is cool. So we now have a unit tested class which will test that you can't place the dice outside the range and will place that the random numbers aren't 0. Is it feasible to test that we get random numbers between 1 and 7 or 1 and 6 inclusive? What do you think? This is there's no right or wrong answer. It's just a conversation. How could we test the random numbers?
What? I don't really understand the question. Are you wanting to test if they're random, or
Yeah, or that we're getting. I mean, you spotted by doing an eyeball test earlier that we weren't getting the number 6. That in 100 rolls of the dice, we didn't get the number 6.
Mhm.
So I guess we could try and recreate the eyeball
Go
test,
away.
unit test, and say, let's
Sit
roll the
down.
dice 100 times and store the result 100 times. And then check that we get at least one of every value.
Okay. Yeah.
So we could do that, but there are 6 values, aren't there? So
Mhm.
if there are 6 values, how many rolls of the dice would you expect to get all 6 values? Well, you need at least 6, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But it's possible that you get 5 ones in a row and then a 6.
hmm
So we'd probably have to do quite a few to check. And I think right now that isn't worthwhile, because what we'd basically be doing is, and this is an interesting bit of conversation. Your eyeballs found this error, right? That we needed to do highest value plus 1.
Mm.
You observed that. But basically, if we were to try and write a test for it, what we'd be saying is, let's get a big load of results to test that the random generator's working. And the random generator is Microsoft code. So I would say it's not really worth testing the generator. We happen to have spotted that we were using the class like idiots because Jace just blindly told you how it worked and we didn't read the help. So I guess the lesson there is we should probably read that little bit of help text that pops up when we use a class. Yeah, okay. I'm going to say right now we could, as a programming exercise, write a unit test for it, but we won't get much value from it. So let's leave it. Let's instead do a much more exciting thing and make a web page which allows us to roll a dice. How do you reckon we'll do that? I reckon that's a good idea. And I think we can do it in the next 20 minutes and pull all this together nicely. So you've got a dice rolling page. What do you think?
Yeah, let's go.
Cool. Okay, can you tell me, by looking at your earlier code, how we make a new dice page with a dice view?
I've already done it, but I think you go to.
Good man. Oh, is that because we made a new controller last week?
I did it yesterday, just before this, but I went off the videos. Yeah.
Okay, great. And Mike, what about yourself? Should we have a look at Alex's code? Alex, would you mind sharing your screen?
Yep, sure.
Cool.
Just one moment.
So while Alex is sharing, what we're about to do is write a new web page, and when we hit the web page, we should return a roll of the dice.
I can't do it while you're sharing yours. I think.
Oh, yeah. Stop share. Okay. There you go.
Should.
So this is nice mob programming now, right? There's 3 of us looking at this code. So there's Alex's D6. Good job.
So I made the dice controller.
Cool.
Return the view, which.
So you looked at the stories that I'd written and you'd started working on them.
Yes.
Perfect.
Made made the view.
Okay, yeah.
Nothing as of yet.
Okay. And does it work?
Yes.
Let's
Don't
have
know
a
if
look.
it'll show. Oh no, that's wrong.
You've accidentally run the scratch pad.
Can you see that?
I can see that running. Can't see the browser yet.
Sort
but
that
that-
on.
Okay.
Just a screen. So it hasn't got
Cool.
anything on it yet, obviously. I've changed the
Okay.
title.
Okay.
Yep. And had to put it on the
You
share.
put it on the menu as well. That's great.
I put it in between rather than on the end because you probably wouldn't have it after the privacy.
After the privacy, okay.
Well,
No, that's good. That's good stuff. So let's go into your controller. And what I'll tell you, I'll reiterate time and time again, the model view controller pattern, the view displays the thing that you want to have a view of. Makes total sense. The controller's job in .NET here, in the core platform, is to accept the message from the browser. So we know that we want the dice in the URL, and then we want to call the single action. So we've got dice/single. And the controller's job is to take a model and a view and glue them together and return them to the browser. Model, view, controller. So let's have a model. So in line 12, I would like you to create a new local variable, which is an instance of your D6. There's a lot of words I just said at you.
yeah.
Make me a new D6, please.
I'm just going to have a quick
butchers, yeah.
Oh wait, with that.
Well, that's an interesting thing. It tried to fill in the namespace for you because it isn't in your list of usings at the top.
Yes. Should I add that in there then?
Yeah, you can do. Yeah, I would tend to because it's easier. But it's worth noting that you don't have to. You could fully qualify your name with that namespace.
Okay.
So now you can delete those extra bits. That's good. And you want your semicolon at the top there.
Oh yeah.
After the using statement. Cool.
And
you can give it any name that you like. Traditionally, people give it the same name as the type.
Yeah. What were we doing with it again? Just making.
We are creating a new instance of it.
Okay.
Cool. And semicolon. And we want, what did the story say? Was it about rolling the dice and getting a random value?
I think so.
Okay. So how do we roll this dice? Die. That's great. Our modeling's working, right? You know that once you've got the dice, there's some method on it that you can call because we've modelled it nicely. Yeah, just need that. Need the semicolon. Okay, now here's the new bit of learning for you chaps. This is about how to get the dice into the view.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of things we need to do. So when you've got in line 16 return view, inside the earrings, I want you to pass in the D6. So just type D6. Okay, so this is pushing it into that view, but at the moment, it won't do anything because we haven't finished writing the view code. So now let's go to the, actually, I'll tell you what, here's a trick. If we want to force that D6 into the view, I would like you to just go to your D6 view in your views section. Let's look at single.cshtml. All right, and I'd actually, you'll see there's no way of referencing the D6 that we're passing in.
Yeah.
So what I want you to do now is delete the single.cshtml because I'm going to show you a trick, and hopefully the trick will work. Otherwise, I'm going to have to write the code myself, which is going to be embarrassing. Oh, the software's running, so you need to hit the stop button.
Right.
Okay, so now we're going to use Visual Studio to do some of the heavy lifting for us. So let's go back to your dice controller. And now I want you to right-click on line 16 and choose Add View. And where's it going to add it? Oh, actually, click on Razor View, not Razor View empty.
Hmm.
Okay, click Add. And you see it says template, empty without model.
Yep.
I want you to pick details. And then I want you to pick the model class and click D6. Cool. And click just add. Hopefully that will stuff that in the right place. It'll be a lot quicker next time,
Hmm.
he said, hopefully. Look at that. And now let's look at the code it's generated for you. Look at the very top line. It's saying model, games model D6.
Hmm.
And what that means is where in your controller, go back to Dice Controller, where we're passing in that D6, the view is now set up to accept it.
Okay.
So if you go back to single.cshtml, that's what those lines at the top there are. Line
Sorry.
1, that's okay. Line 1 is saying you will have a thing and it will be of type D6.
Okay.
So as we look through the code here now, look at that. It's looked at all the public properties and it's writing them out for us. And it's actually added in an extra bit of code there, which I'd like you to delete.
Which?
That, sorry, yes, lines 21 to 25.
Okay.
And I won't bother explaining, it'll distract us.
Okay.
Okay, so if you now hit the play button, we got a website, hit the single die, current value 6, hit it again, hit refresh. Go on, look at that. Random numbers, you rolling a dice, baby, on a web page. This is awesome. This is actually a real milestone, right? Because you knew how to create the page, you knew how to wire it into the menu, you now know how to write a little model with limited output and render that in a web page. That's actually a huge achievement. I know it's taken us a couple of weeks,
Mhm.
and I know if I just wrote the lesson out with instructions, you'd get there very quickly. But I bring nothing to that. You can just go and watch videos to do that and read books. Okay. So this is awesome. Mike, are you on board? Are you up to speed?
No.
No. Okay.
First little video was setting up Meg Store. So on these.
Oh, you not watched it yet?
No. I've just been store
Cool.
bed.
No problem. No problem. What I'd like Alex to do, I'd like you to share your screen then, and then I'd like Alex to walk you through adding a new controller and doing what he just did.
How do I screen share?
It's Alt S.
Here we are.
And I think if you get to the point where Alex has got to in the next 15 minutes, that's a hell of an achievement and a good 2 hours at which to stop. Although we're right in the meat of the thing now. And
Okay, so where are we going?
all right, Alex, dictate to him what he needs to do, my friend.
Right. If you create new controller or add new controller, I think it was the top one.
Yep.
Is it controller class empty or
Control class empty.
and then change the name to dice controller.
Oh right, I'll just
Yeah. Okay. Oh wait, no, we did this a different way, didn't we?
But that's okay. I mean, so here's the thing.
We did it through the model, didn't we?
Yeah. So Mike, what Alex has done is he's looked at the stories that I've written, and one of the stories is instead of having an index method, we're going to have one called single for single dice, right? Single die.
Mm-hmm.
So you can rename that to just be single instead of index.
On the
Sorry, the
code.
method. Yeah, the action method.
Line 12.
And traditionally, we'd put it with a capital S because it's a public method. Alex can correct us at his leisure.
Yep.
Then what did we just do in here? We did
Put the dice in that we made.
D6.
And you want to make it roll as well. So,
Yes.
Okay, in your constructor on line 14, you're missing your earrings.
Indeed, I was just looking at that.
Oh.
Then, how did we do the
go
view?
to the models, the D6 model.
That.
Actually, it was in the controller, Alex.
Oh, controller, sorry.
Yeah.
Is
So
right click on the return line.
Right, yeah.
And add view. Yep.
Add.
Cool.
Well, Visual Studio takes forever.
Yeah, yours is quite slow too, right?
Yeah. Is it normally faster than this?
Well, it used to be. Yeah.
Deleted that.
Yeah.
Let's change it. I don't know if I actually I haven't set anything up.
You didn't set up the you haven't set up the link in the menu yet, have you? No. But you can navigate to it by hand. So if you just go back to the browser for a second and then go up to the address bar. So next to the and type / at the end. Dice.
Is it just dice?
Dice/single. Okay, so dice is the controller, single is the action. Skills. Hit refresh. Let's watch it work.
Smashed it. Nice. Stop running that. Where did I want to go?
The shared
is the home page.
It's in the shared for the buttons, I think.
Shared
layout.
Now, is this because you remember doing this, Mike, or from our earlier session, or from watching videos?
Well, I've done my own sort of.
You did the earlier stuff, didn't you?
Yeah, I've covered Bootstrap and things before. So.
Cool.
So it's just what I'm remembering. Really.
Good.
The action was on the die. Is that right? Is that all I'm changing?
And the controller.
Nice.
Okay, so if the controller's dice, what's the action?
Single.
Nice. Cool. I love this. You fellas are pretty quick.
There we go. Nice one.
Sweet. Okay, good job. Do either of you have the Azure DevOps page open with the stories on it?
Yes.
Okay, let's have a look. Oh, it's all right. Look, Mike's got it. He's on it. Let's go to the boards, Mike.
Backlog.
Yeah, backlogs. Look at that. Number 2, roll a single die. So let's have a read of this story.
Well, this bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, this isn't the one, is it?
It's
Alex?
the first one, I think.
First one. Okay, let's go hit back. And what does the first one say? We're going to display a simple die. What does that say? Let's have a look at that one.
It's the same, isn't it? Oh no, this is different.
Ah, okay. Oh, good. So let's actually go and adjust our code to match this story. All right. So here's a little bit of Scrum goodness. Now, Alex went ahead and did this, which is very admirable. In a Scrum team, what we'll have done before accepting these stories is we'll have looked them over together and said, do we understand what the story is? Do we think we can deliver it? Are we happy to do so in the next 2 weeks? So let's have that very quick conversation. Read the story and the acceptance criteria.
The view should display the current value, and when hitting the URL, the initial value of the die should be its lowest value.
So we're not actually rolling it on this part yet.
No.
Correct. Okay, so it looks like you understand the story.
Mhm.
Are you happy to commit to delivering it?
Yes.
In that case, move that to actually, yeah. All right, no, let me take a step back. Does the story make sense? Do you have enough information? Do you need to ask me any more questions? Is it suitable?
It is.
Okay,
Yes.
so let's mark that as approved. And then in 3 days' time or next week when we start the sprint, we'll come back and accept the story and do it. Okay, so we're already at that point. So we know the story is approved and we want to deliver it in the next 2 weeks. So we actually then say, yeah, we're going to agree, we're going to commit to delivering this. So let's move it to committed and hit the save and just hit the save actually. Well, there you go. So let's do that. Let's change our simple die.
You're off. We're going out in a second.
Another 5 minutes, Truffers.
Leave me alone. Go on. The sooner you leave me alone, the sooner we go out. Come on. Sit down. Yeah. Sorry, so what are we going for now?
So we're actually going to go and do that one. So you might want to have a quick look at the detail of it. Display a simple die. So we need to go and adjust our code because we actually, the code we wrote was for a different story.
This in URL, the initial value of the die should be its lowest. What does that mean?
So we want to place it
die
as
should
the
be its
lowest
lowest.
value at the beginning. Well, when we view the page.
Yeah. So when we go to that URL, die/single, it should display a die with whatever the lowest value is.
The next line then says the view should display the current value of the die. So do you want both of them
Yeah.
You wanted to say 1 and then whatever the random number is.
No. We're basically saying the dice should display the lowest value, which happens to also, and the current value is also the lowest value. Okay, so yeah, right. Okay, yeah. So this is good. We're actually having some questioning of the acceptance criteria here. The view should display the current value of the die, and furthermore, when we hit that page, it should be the lowest value. So what that's saying is set the dice to be the lowest value. Place the dice at the lowest value. And because I've written it badly, you've not understood it very well. So as part of the Scrum process, we have this to and fro where you go, I don't get it. How can are we doing two things? Are we doing one? So we're actually having that useful process now, which is, yeah, you're right, Mike. I've not written this very well. When you hit the URL, it should show whatever the lowest possible value of the dice is. All right. So we might re-edit that to demystify the fact that I've written that on 2 lines. Really, what it translates as show the lowest value, right?
Yeah.
And that's the conversation that we're having as part of the Scrum process. It's not that you don't understand it. It's that I've written it in a confusing way, which is what product owners will do. They'll try and do the best job. But the whole purpose of having a 2-hour meeting with 20 stories to read is that we make sure we've demystified them and that they're suitable for work.
Yeah,
that you understand them. All right, so that's fine.
I'm reading this, and my instant thought is why? Because sure, we could just throw up the page and just with HTML just put in a paragraph that always displays 1, because the value of the dice will always be 1. And if that's also the current value displaying,
we could do, but this
I just don't understand the
purpose
of this. Yeah,
the purpose is just for the lesson. It's just to learn from going from setting the lowest value to then calling a method and hitting the run button. And yeah, okay. It's not actually for the game. It's more for the learning
process.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
And it's an eyeball test of the place method.
Mm-hmm.
So if you now go back to your controller, we're actually doing a roll, and what our story says is effectively it says, instead of rolling the dice, call the place method with a number 1.
Yeah. Okay. If I change that. Automatically change the view?
You need to recompile it. It's still running, so you need to hit the restart button. There you go.
Save that and then run it again.
So what we're tending to do now with this Monopoly project, right, is when we're doing new bits and bobs, we'll do the basicest thing to prove that it works. So we'll write a unit test, write the code, we'll write some noddy ASP.NET page to check that we know how to use it. Great, it's working.
Cool.
So now let's go back to our story. I reckon that the 2 of you have done that, but the other boys haven't. So if you look down at the bottom right hand corner, related work, you can update your versions of that, your Alex and your Mike to done.
Yep. One thing I'm not sure about is how you would go about doing place of the lowest value rather than just typing in 1. Good
question.
I've tried doing it, but it doesn't seem to want to do low value or lowest value.
Yeah. Okay. So the lowest value is the internal workings of the class, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
What I should have said in the story then is just set it as 1.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So my acceptance criteria, my story wasn't great
Mhm.
because, and here's why it wasn't great. I actually had insight into the workings of the class, so I called it lowest value. I should have just picked a number and said, as the product owner, I want you to show me a dice on the screen with an arbitrary number, and I'm going to say it's 1.
Okay. Is that how you would go about?
You
doing
could
that,
do
I'm
what
guessing?
Mike's doing here, and is writing a getter to find out what the lowest value is. So that's interesting. Good score, Mike.
Where am I going? I'm lost. There we go.
Go into the controller. That's it. It's not this, because in this case, this is the dice controller. So it's D6 dot.
Yes.
Nice. So actually, Mike's now exactly fulfilled the story there. And I think it's good, Mike, that you're wondering why we're doing some of these things. And
Yeah.
often the answer will be to learn something.
Yeah, no, it was more just the fact that we'd just made
Yeah.
it. We could randomly do it, and then we were going almost
Yeah.
backwards. That's like what.
No, and it's fine. Some of the exercises that we'll do are, they'll take us 3 hours and you'll get a point out of it.
Yeah.
But we'll then go on to use it more astutely in the Monopoly project. But right now we're laying down these foundations, which is going well. So I think you're now capable of doing story number 2 because you already did it 10 minutes ago. So why don't you quickly crank out story number 2, which is to roll the dice.
Roll a single dice.
And the story says roll 1 because we're rolling 1 dice. That's good. Put it into committed because you are going to do it in the next 3 minutes ago. And what was the URL in that story?
Roll 1.
Roll 1. Cool.
Roll. And then do I just click here to change mine to done?
If you've done it,
Yeah.
or you're about to do it. So what do we need?
It's just not what we just did.
Oh yeah, but now you're breaking your other one. Look, you're breaking your single action. So Control Z out of that until you get it all back. Okay, so we've got one URL which is dice/single. Now we want a new URL which is dice/roll1.
Oh right.
All right, so we're adding to it. We're adding another action to the controller. Okay, you're outside of the class there, my friend. You need to go back up 1 bracket.
Oh, to stay in the same class.
Yeah.
The iAction result again?
Yep.
What is iAction result doing?
It is defining that this action or this method is going to return, basically it's going to return a view, which is of type iAction result. That'll be we'll come back to that in the future.
Doesn't matter that I'm using the same notation, does it? As a different page.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Now, here's an interesting thing. Do we have a roll 1 view yet?
No.
And do you think the roll 1 view is going to be pretty much identical to the other one?
I'd expect so.
It's just going to show the dice, isn't it? So you can either generate another view, or you could reuse this one.
What, we just copy and paste it into another one?
No, I would say let's do a trick. All right, we know that we could regenerate the view, but instead, let's go back to the controller and let's use one of the variants of this view. If you do D6 comma inside the bracket, so put a comma inside there, and you see it says 4 of 4. Scroll through that list by clicking the up and down arrows. And again, model, yeah, and again, and one more. Okay, so instead of D6 comma, put single comma D6. And we're going to use that fourth overload there, look, where we're returning a view name and passing in the model. So you want a string, single, so you want that in speech marks.
All right.
And then comma D6. Now, this is slightly advanced here. What we're doing is saying we know that the view should be pretty much the same thing as we use in single.
Hmm.
So instead of creating a new roll 1 view, we're just saying, instead of doing the convention, let's
Use
just
the
reuse
same.
it. Yeah. Look at that. Look at him go.
Lovely.
Cool. Ah, there's the thing. Look at what happens when you hit that roll. When you hit the roll 1 link, the view name is called single, isn't it? That from hitting the dice, it's single.
Oh,
And
right,
then
yeah.
yeah. I mean, maybe we want to change that. Maybe we don't. Maybe we did want a new view. Maybe we didn't. I'm not too worried.
Okie dokie, yeah.
Okay, so you'll see there's some optional extras in those 2 stories, which was to render out an image of a dice with a selected value.
I think, Jason, I need to head off.
Okay, well, I'm going to leave that as homework for Alex, see if he can figure out how to get an image out. We did it in an earlier video. And can you boys self-organize again for a lesson on Wednesday? Or if Wednesday suits you both?
Yeah, I think
Yep.
Fraser responded with a thumbs up to both
Yeah.
of them.
Great.
I don't know about Simon. I haven't checked the availability again.
Yeah, no worries.